everybody, and happy Monday to you. It's John Moran with STARR Success. And as you know, Mondays we like to give you tips and strategies to help you be more successful, both from a sales management standpoint and from a selling situation standpoint. Today, what we want to talk about is how do you handle objections? How do you handle those issues and challenges that come up from prospective buyers and from decision makers? Well, there's a number of different strategies you can use, and I don't have enough time in this video to go through all of them, but I wanted to pinpoint a couple of unique strategies I think would be interesting and that you might find useful immediately. So number one of the strategies I like to use, and this applies to a very specific scenario. A lot of times it's when I'm doing direct outreach, or one of my team members is doing direct outreach to a prospective buyer or decision maker after we've done our pre-marketing and all of that, which, you know, that's a whole different video, is we'll get in touch with somebody and we'll have them on the phone and they'll say something to the effect of, send us some information, which ironically enough, the way we market, we've always sent them information in advance, but nonetheless, that'll come back to, we'll come full circle on that in a second, but send me some information, happy with our current provider, not interested. So what I've found a lot of times is human nature is we just tend to say no automatically. Like it's almost like this pre-programmed response that prospective buyers and decision makers have, where they get a phone call from somebody and their immediate reaction is to shut down. And so one of the strategies I want to give to you is when that happens, and try this specifically with this direct outreach, when you're on the phone and you're reaching out to somebody, is just ignore it. Pretend like they didn't even say it. Go right around it. So for example, if someone told me, you know what, John, yeah, it sounds great, why don't you send me some information? I might then throw in a question behind that that's completely unrelated to what the gentleman or woman just said. So they'll say, hey John, why don't you send me some information? You know what, Bob, I was just curious, when you make a decision, when you try to procure a vendor similar to the service that we offer, what are some of the criteria you go through? And as human beings, our natural reaction when asked the question is to do what? It's to answer it, right? So that's one of the strategies that I end up using, is I'll just ignore the objection and ask a question. Now, let's talk about some other objections that might happen in a more face-to-face selling situation, where ignoring the objection might seem a little bit arrogant, and quite frankly, it might be rude, and the person might be pissed off that you did it. So in a face-to-face selling situation, if there's an issue or something that arises from an objection standpoint, a lot of times that's just the buyer, the decision maker, really not understanding the full offering. So it's important in these cases to isolate and then align with the prospective buyer, with the decision maker. So what I mean by that, I said, well, I think isolate is pretty clear, right? It's self-explanatory. So if someone says, well, your price is too high, let's just take a very generic objection. Well, you want to isolate that. And so the easiest way to do that is just ask some questions. So price is too high. Well, hey, I can appreciate that, and I understand where you're coming from. That's how I align with that person. When you say the price is too high, help me out understand that specifically. What about the price is too high for the value that we're offering you? And we really want to dive into that. And so ask some open-ended questions to get the person talking. And the alignment piece is really critical. And so things like, you know, I can respect that, I understand where you're coming from, help me understand. Those types of questions and statements really align yourself with the buyer. So keep that in mind. I think the other thing you want to do, and this for whatever reason when it comes to like traditional sales training, they don't talk about this a lot, but remember, we're talking about sales conversations, not sales presentations. I mean, the whole dynamic of selling has really changed. So when you get an objection or there's some sort of an issue that's raised in the selling process, how about doing something unique like addressing it? So this is another strategy that I use, and again, these are all specific and they're based on the situation that I'm involved in, you know, the kind of the chemistry between me and the decision maker and what's going on there. But sometimes it just calls for addressing it straight on. So if the challenge or an objection, for example, is, you know what, you're a smaller company, we typically deal with bigger and larger vendors. Well, you're going to have to address that. You can't ignore it. You can definitely isolate it and you can align with the customer, but ultimately you're going to have to figure out why it makes sense in that objection when you're a smaller company, and taking that as an example. Why does it make sense for them to use this? You got to address it, like head on, boom. Address the objection. So those are three really simple strategies. Reviewing them really quick. So number one, you want to go ahead and ignore it. And a lot of times that applies to direct outreach when you're dealing with somebody over the phone. Number two is to isolate and align with the client. Number three is to simply address it head on. Now, we can get into specifics on a lot of these. Don't have enough time on this video, but if you have any questions, by all means, or if you have, better yet, a specific objection that you've run into or a challenge in a sales process, send it to us. You know, email us. It's John, John, at STARRsuccess.com. You can also get info at starrsuccess.com. You can go to our website, submit it there at Ask a Star. So there's a lot of different ways that you can reach out to us with your objections. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to help you with a specific example, real-world example that you might have. And other than that, here's to your greater success. We'll talk to you soon.